The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Hello, my downers. Welcome to another episode of The System is Down. Hey, guys, it is another Monday. And, of course, another Monday means another fun-filled episode of the least comfortable show on the web. Probably your least favorite show on the web because it is the least comfortable show. The System is Down, where we talk about all sorts of uncomfortable things like conspiracies, politics, and religion. So, if you are new here, welcome to the show. We don't need to talk too much about what we're about because that's kind of a lot of what this episode is. A lot of what the discussion is, the panel discussion that we did at PorcFest. If you have been listening to the show for a while, then you know that this last week I flew out to PorcFest, the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, in the middle of the mountains, to celebrate liberty with a bunch of crazy libertarians. And, I was on a panel and recorded some episodes and different things, different discussions, and filmed a documentary for the Lions of Liberty guys and all sorts of fun stuff. Got to meet a lot of people that I only knew formerly from the internets, and now I know them in real person, so I can confirm that these people do in fact exist. Except for Chris Spangle. I can't confirm nor deny because he was not there. So, it was a lot of fun. Did a lot of fun things, and you're gonna hear about it. You're gonna hear about it. So this panel discussion is one that I was on, hosted by Mark Clare of Lions of Liberty, and it was me, Roger Paxton, Nick Pacone, and Jay, last name that I can never know or pronounce. Just talking about building communities through podcasting. We talked a lot about liberty and a lot of just different things, how we started our shows and stuff like that. So, it's a fun little conversation. It's not typically the type of thing that we talk about around here on the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, but, I'm tired. It's been a long week, and I was on it, and that's all that is required for my criteria for this show, is that I was on it or involved in it in some way, and then I'll release it as an episode, because it's an interesting kind of behind the scenes look at some of these different things that go on in the podcast world. So I thought you guys would enjoy it, and I thought it'd be an easy one for me, except I am going to edit the video that I took of the panel as well, so you can check that out on YouTube or Facebook or all the things if you want to watch us sit on stage and talk, if you find that more exciting than listening to us sit on stage and talk. So anyway, if you want to hear more stuff from behind the scenes at PorcFest, I recorded a whole bunch, and I'll be releasing it to members of the Downers Club. If you don't know what the Downers Club is, what are you doing with your life? It is the Patreon that supports the show, and it also affords you bonus episodes of the show every single week. So if you like what you hear here, if you want it to keep going, if you want to get even more of it, even more uncomfortable content, even more offensive content, you can go over to patreon.com/The System is Down and sign up for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get all sorts of fun things. I released some behind the scenes stuff last week from PorcFest. Some that I recorded whilst walking down bear-infested mountain road by myself in the dark. And another one that I did, it was the last night of PorcFest, and a bunch of people were like pretty hammered, so I decided to grab my recording stuff and just walk around trolling people. And so I was just asking ridiculous questions. Like I asked Jason Stapleton why he's a statist, I asked Roger Paxton why he loves government, and I asked John Odermatt why he hates felons and I made the claim that the only reason he does Felony Friday is so that he can out people as felons. A lot of interesting and ridiculous conversations there, and there will be much more to come in the coming weeks as I slowly work my way through the piles and piles of audio. So if you want to get all that, if you want to check it out and see what's going on, you can sign up for the Downers Club at patreon.com/The System is Down. And if you don't like it, if you try it, if you come on in, you try it out, and you're like, it's just not for me, man. It's just not for me. There's no commitments. There's no contracts. You know, I'm a libertarian. I play fair. If you don't like it, then leave. Just leave. But if you do like it, then stick around because there's going to be more to come. All right, that's enough rambling for here at the top. I'll chat more about some things after, of course, as you know. But here is the panel that I was on at PorcFest about creating communities through podcasting with a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of real human friends now. So let's get weird.
So welcome to Creating Communities Tent. This is the place where we talk about how we create communities, especially in New Hampshire. I'm Dennis Pratt, and our lovely assistant Alyssa is here today. And today we are going to be talking, this morning we're going to be talking about podcasting, how podcasting can actually create communities. And luckily we have, as the moderator of our panel, Mark Clare, who found libertarianism, found his freedom thing with the Ron Paul campaign in 2008. And he went ahead and created the Lions of Liberty, co-founded the Lions of Liberty, and it's been around for about 5 years now. Is that
almost 6? Yeah,
almost 6 years. So, Mark Clare.
Thank you, Dennis. Woohoo! Good morning. How are we all doing today?
We're here.
It's funny. This is about creating communities because so many people here are people that are fans of the show that are part of the community we've built. So this is really perfect. Mostly just Tyler, but no, this whole crew. I don't know how many of you guys know about my show or their shows. Do all of you guys listen to podcasts? Does anybody in here not listen to podcasts? All right, you got to go. I'm sorry. This is only for podcast people. No. But I'm Mark Clare. About 6 years ago, I started the Lions of Liberty podcast. I did it with the idea of really, back in the time, as hard as it is to believe, there weren't really a lot of libertarian podcasts. There were hardly any. I know that seems crazy right now because it's hard to meet someone here that doesn't have a podcast or at any libertarian event. But believe it or not, there was a time before the dawn of man when not everybody had a libertarian podcast. So at the time, I was getting really big into podcasts, and at work, I did a lot of work where I could just kind of tune out and put something on, and I just couldn't find libertarian podcasts. There was Lou Rockwell did some occasionally, and that was about the extent of it. So I went and decided to start my own libertarian podcast where my goal was to really just interview people in the movement, figure out how they became libertarians, and really get to the core of why people believe in what they believe, why other people are out there talking about these ideas. So that's what got me started. It kind of spiraled from that point, and my intention was to always sort of build a community in a way, and I started with my own community, the people that I was personally friends with that I kind of came into the ideas of liberty with, and eventually they were able to sprout off and become hosts on our show too. So even from the very beginning of my podcast, it was a community from the start. I mean, that was the way I viewed it from the very beginning, and I think it's really become a vital tool to create communities in a way that is so unique in this modern age. Never before have we had the technology to reach so many people. Even when you look at download numbers, and even my very first podcast probably had 40 downloads, which might seem very small, and it is very small. But if you picture a room or a tent that has 40 people in it, there's probably not even 40 people here right now. So 40 people listening to a podcast, if you think about it that way, is awesome. And as that spirals and spirals, and that becomes hundreds or thousands or what have you, picturing those people in a room, in an audience, listening to what you're saying for some crazy reason is really, the most amazing thing about podcasting to me. So that's the way to look at it, but I will first start introducing my panel here, starting with, should we start with the guy who doesn't even host a libertarian podcast, or no?
Burn.
Well, since you're first, we'll start with you. This is Dan Smots. He is the host of the System Is Down podcast. Not to be confused with the band System of the Down.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
How are
Mark.
things?
I was hoping that you would just talk the whole time. And you just invited us here for this panel so that you would...
I just needed an
have
audience.
A guaranteed
and you guys
audience,
were,
yes.
These are the VIP seats. That's what this is.
That's what these are for. Dan, tell us a little bit about why you started a podcast in 2 minutes or less. I don't care how long you take.
All right.
I got to grab a drink.
The rest of the time is going to be how I started a podcast. Now, I started mine basically, like our thing is just we talk about uncomfortable conversations and things that are taboo and mainstream, like conspiracies, politics, and religion. And
None of that's welcome here, sir. I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm going to ask you to leave.
And Mark's been on my show a couple times. Those are some of my least downloaded episodes. But,
wow.
Just because.
This guy brings the
that's
heat.
pretty much it. My community is a bunch of weird people. People come and go. They come in and they're like, oh, you talked about chemtrails or something, so you must be in that camp. And then they realize that I'm going to talk to somebody else later that disagrees, and because we talk about everything. We talk with everybody about everything, whether they agree or not. And so people come, and then they get pissed off and leave very quickly. So we attract weirdos that are open-minded, and those are the ones that stick. So.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Mark.
And this guy, you may have seen him floating around the campgrounds, sneering at people, but this is Roger Paxton, host of the Lava Flow podcast. And he had something to do with this. I'm not sure exactly what his role was, but...
It was all my wife, I promise.
Keeping her happy was your role then.
That's what I do.
If you know what I mean. Roger, why don't you tell people how and why you started the Lava Flow podcast, how did this all come about, and what the hell is Lava Flow? What is this?
Lava is libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, agorist. I actually woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with that in my head one day. And so I started digging around to see if has anybody come up with this already? And Darryl W. Perry had a Lava Awards where they would give out awards to books and stuff. And it was it had the words a little bit transposed, but it was basically the same. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, can I use that? He said, sure. So that's where that started. But the reason I started...
He's been wanting to sue you ever since, but he just can't.
Nah.
It's not allowed based on his own principles.
But so the reason I started my show is because back when there were not very many libertarian podcasts, a good friend of mine, Chris Spangle, started We Are Libertarians. And I listened to that show quite a bit because we were friends. And that was actually one of the first podcasts I ever listened to. And it was so bad back in the day. I mean, it was terrible. And I thought, well, I've got to be able to do better than this, right? So I barely do better than him, but that's why the show got started.
Just to one-up a friend, essentially.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
how all great projects are started.
But now his show is so much better, so definitely check out We Are Libertarians.
He's improved a little bit. You've pulled him to the black and yellow a little bit.
We're getting there. I mean,
where's he at?
He couldn't make it.
There you go.
But I mean, every time I talk to him, he's a little more black and yellow.
We'll get there. Nick Picone, host of Sounds Like Liberty. What's up, Nick?
What's up? So...
Tell me some things.
It's okay.
How'd you find yourself on this here stage?
So I was listening to the Lions of Liberty, which I found sometime after Tom Woods, and I heard some lunatic ranting about Rick and Morty. So
that wasn't me, by the way.
It was not Mark. And I'm like, if this lunatic can do this, I've got all the equipment laying around in my basement anyways. I might as well just start doing it. So I felt like, let's talk to libertarians about music. And then I continued to start podcasts after that. So lots of podcasting.
And you are a musician, correct? So this is kind of your wheelhouse going in?
Yeah, he was in this tent Wednesday playing his music. Yeah.
Well, playing other people's music, but still.
When did you get your start, like, doing music? Have you done it your whole life, or?
Literally the entire life.
From the womb, you came out with a mandolin.
Yes, singing. Definitely singing.
Cool.
I mean, escaping the vagina is a good time to sing.
And it's always cool to sort of be able to live our lifelong passions out in some way. My passion was ranting and raving at people, so I was able to translate that into the podcast. Your passion was music.
I like the ranting and raving part too, though. So
it all works.
I just like talking. I like the sound of my own voice, so I figured spread that around, try and get more people involved in that camp.
Yeah, that's
if I were to have a community, that's the community, people that like my voice.
And that's why people start podcasts, because they like to talk and nobody fucking listens. So
Right.
we just put it on a podcast.
When you have a lot of friends that don't let you get a word in, then you start a podcast.
So you started because of Howie, right?
Pretty much, yes. That's actually why he's not here right now. I let him sleep in because I wanted to be able to actually host this event.
I don't know.
Jay Caetano. You know what's funny? I didn't even coordinate with you before the show and ask exactly how to pronounce your last name. Is it Caetano?
However the fuck you want to say it.
All right. Now that's the libertarian answer. Jay, let us know how you started your podcast.
So I started podcasting a little bit differently. I listened to a lot of podcasts, but really I was tired of the 9-to-5 grind, and I wanted to get out of the office. So podcasting is one escape for me. And so that's why I started the podcast, but I took a little different spin on it. I noticed a lot of people like to talk politics, but I wanted to do business and technology. So we try to focus on the entrepreneurs on the Anarcho Inc. podcast. And as you can tell, I don't use the word liberty in my podcast, which is okay, but I think it's been outdone, and it's time for some anarcho-capitalism.
Absolutely.
Okay, I get it. I use the word liberty a lot. Jeez.
Got it on his T-shirt.
All right, thanks, Jay. So the focus of this panel is to really discuss how we've used podcasting to build our communities. So that's what I kind of want to start with first. And I think it's really difficult in some ways when you first start a podcast because basically the only people who might even listen to your show are the people you literally just know in real life that you have to just tell this thing exists and maybe hope that they listen to it. So I think that really is the biggest challenge in many ways, is how to find that community or build the platforms that allow the community to find you, which is ultimately kind of how things play out. For us, I was very active on message boards. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the Daily Paul back in the day. All right, see, there we go. See, so I was very active on there for years, not even with the idea of a podcast in mind. It was just another home I found where I could talk about the ideas of liberty. People there were excited about the Ron Paul campaign, and we would get into page-long debates and discussions about many, many topics. So I built up sort of a little bit of a name with a lot of people there. So I at least had a first place to launch from, a place where people had known that I was someone they could engage with, someone they could have conversations with. So hopefully maybe they'll check out my podcast. And that's really the only way you can start out, is using whatever credence you can buy in whatever forum you participate in, whether that's an online message board, a Facebook group, whatever it is, or even just your personal friends and building that rapport with people so that they've at least heard of you or seen you or heard you speak reasonably and think, okay, I'll give this guy a shot. And from there, it just kind of spiraled. It just really becomes something where you can only find your audience so much. You can only reach out so much. At some point, it becomes where your community has to build it for you. Where you create a small community, and then they are the ones that become your drivers. They're the ones that become your advertisers. They're the ones that want to share your show, and they become so passionate about what you're doing that they want to tell everyone else around them, or at least press the share button on Facebook, whatever. But what I want to first ask you guys is how you went about starting from scratch, as we all did at some point. How you first went about building that community and sort of turning your idea into something that other people were actually getting involved in, getting excited about, and that sort of thing. Why don't we start at the other end? I'll flip it out. We'll start with Jay.
Yeah, so actually I started with anarchocoffee.com. That's what I started with.
Plug time. You can find our amazing coffee at lionsofliberty.com/coffee. It's called The Morning Roar, and it's a great way to start your day. Jay, continue.
That's right. And it is great tasting coffee, and that's how I started.
I don't just say that.
Yep. And so from there, I felt like I needed to do more, and so I started the podcast, and I wanted to talk to more entrepreneurs in the liberty movement. And I wanted to talk about free markets, and one thing I'm finding is, where are all the entrepreneurs? And that's something we forget about sometimes, is the entrepreneurial spirit from being a libertarian, right? And that's what we look for. That's what we look to discuss and promote those businesses on our podcast and get the word out there about those small businesses. But really, it all started with Anarcho Coffee. I reached out to Roger. Roger got some. He loved it. And
Voluntary Valhalla. That stuff was so good. Oh, my God.
Voluntary Valhalla. That's a hell of a name.
Yeah, we've got voluntary.
I thought Morning Roar was cool, but no longer.
No. Yeah, Voluntary Valhalla, Rothbard Roast.
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist for the Rothbard roast.
And for everybody here, I've got 15% off. If you want to come see me after the show, I got a coupon we'll hand out.
It's really just an elaborate plug panel. That's the main reason we're here. We're just selling coffee. Everyone's got a different brand
coffee,
to sell.
I don't sell coffee.
It's good coffee.
Because somebody hasn't sponsored the show yet.
That's right.
No, he's selling meth.
And it started from there, spiraled, and now Anarcho Inc. has become the home for buds, brews, beans, and Bitcoin. Right.
Very
so
nice.
That's what it's about. If you want to listen, just look up Anarcho Inc., and we've got some awesome guests on.
Sweet. Nick, would you like to take it away? Tell us a little bit about how you built your community.
So I would say I'm more of a grassroots kind of guy. I'm really obsessed with people forming communities. So I was listening to the Lions Liberty podcast, and I guess it started out just kind of going through randomly talking to people in the forum saying, hey, I'm doing this thing. It's about this. Music's usually a pretty easy thing to get people to sign on board with. So it's easy to get a couple quick listens, and hopefully they stay with you. Ideally, you try and make your show better to add more to there. Eventually, we spiraled out, and I got a couple more friends, another podcast that we started, the Freedom Song 365 project, where we send out a daily email looking at libertarian music that's not necessarily libertarian, but you can get libertarian lessons out of it.
It's definitely a great thing, this Freedom 360. Check it out for sure.
Come on, get the full plug-in. That's why we're here.
I mean,
I want the website. I want the...
I check it out every single day.
Yeah, freedomsong365.com. You can sign up for it. Any way you can. Like, it really is just a lot of getting out and talking to people, going on other people's podcasts, trying to get the word out. Basically the only way this thing spreads is if you go out and you make those personal connections. So for me, a lot of it is just making personal connections and turning them onto your outlet.
No, it really is. I met Nick through this. If it wasn't for podcasting, I wouldn't be here.
I heard him on a podcast and I said, hey, why don't you come on my show?
That's pretty much
That
how
happened
it
to me
works.
too.
That's actually how I know everybody up here and everybody down here. So
That's Daddy. He formed all the podcasts. It's the progenitor.
call me daddy.
I refuse to call you daddy.
He's way more into it than he's letting on, folks, I promise.
I'm
How have you
sleeping
guys-
in your room tonight, and I'll call you daddy all you want.
I thought this was going to be for the bonus show that we're doing afterwards, behind the tent. How have you found, you mentioned like having guests on. How have you found having guests on that are maybe hosts of other shows or what have you, and engaging with the other communities to bring them sort of into your own community? Has that been kind of one of the biggest ways to build your
It's a mixed bag. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. At the end of the day...
The Chris Cantwell fans, they got a little rowdy, I heard, when they found your show.
We could blame Chris Cantwell fans.
What was Chris Cantwell's favorite song?
Personally,
He didn't interview Chris Cantwell.
The part of the problem fans are the ones I had the most problem with, actually.
Oh, shit.
All right, Mr. Paxton, what about yourself? How did you go about building your community from the ground up?
Because I forgot the question, so thank you.
I know. I saw that look in your eyes. Like,
It was 3 questions
what
ago.
the fuck
so.
are we talking about again?
Deer in the headlights look. What? So I was fortunate that I was already, quite plugged in. Libertarian Party of Arkansas, National Libertarian Party, and again, there were very few podcasts. I think I even started mine before yours. We'll have to check that.
Maybe. We'll have to
Yeah,
check
definitely.
But they were
September
all
2013, so
I don't remember.
check your archives.
I'll
pal.
do that. But I mean, there were almost none out there. So anybody who was searching for liberty or libertarian podcasts found me. And, because I'd been so involved in the Libertarian Party, I already was able to bring in some community. But then when I, dropped off of the political aspect of life, thank God, I started getting many more, of these kind of fringe people, those anarchists, those dirty anarchists. And, I love that so much because there's never a week that doesn't go by that I get an email or I meet somebody who said that, if it weren't for your show, I would not be an anarchist. And that's why I do my show is to reach those ideas of liberty to people. And whether you agree with me or not, I mean, Mark and I disagree quite a bit.
Definitely not.
No, yeah. That doesn't matter to me. Just, at least give it a shot. So building that community and I tell you, I'm a Facebook whore. I hate Facebook, but I love Facebook. I hate going on Facebook, but that's a great place to find your base. So I share everything I can everywhere on Facebook. That's a great way to find community. But also, places like Reddit and, everything like that. So the community's out there. You just got to reach it.
Well, I want to make a note to thank you guys in particular who were sitting here talking about how there were no libertarian podcasts at one point. It's gotten to the point now where there's so many libertarian podcasts, I host a podcast about libertarian podcasts.
Yes, that is awesome. I love that so much.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to give that a quick plug? Because that's something you just started.
Sorry, liberpods.com. You can go and check it out. But it's actually called This Week in Liberpods. And it's every week I'll promote 5 different, kind of clips from different libertarian podcasts that are out there. And there's enough that it's probably going to be long into next year before I get to repeating any. There's that many.
Nice.
So you guys apparently did good at getting the community building. There's a lot of them out there.
Well, I think something Roger mentioned too is like posting on Facebook and just like building different communities. Like I built a community in a sense on the Daily Pulse. So that was somewhere. I think it's important to build your name as not as someone who's selling a podcast first. Get involved in communities where you know you're going to want to have people listening to you, and just be an active, productive member of those communities. So get involved in discussions. Be someone who people don't just think they're just here promoting a podcast and nothing else. Be an active, useful member of whatever communities you get involved in, and then people will maybe want to hear what you're doing. If you're just seen as only a promoter, I think it's more important to put sort of your own visibility and your own use as sort of a productive member of whatever communities you're getting involved in, and then you can say, by the way, the real reason I'm here, I have this podcast.
Start arguments on Facebook and then throw out your podcast. But start the argument first before you just throw it out.
Definitely start the argument.
Right.
Well, no, for me personally, my goal has always been I had a goal. I want to establish myself as the libertarian music guy. Like I want to, and not that I want necessarily people to come and see my podcast, but I want to be a wealth of information in that particular niche and be the guy people go to if they have questions about it. Yeah, so it's like you want to give to people. It's the ultimate goal.
Right, that's the thing. We all kind of do it differently, right? I talk business and tech. We try to find the entrepreneurs. Roger sometimes covers news from a libertarian perspective, right? You do the interviews with libertarians.
I only listen to hear him say, fuck him in the neck.
Fuck him in the neck.
With a knife.
Is there a clip of that somewhere?
That's the only reason I brought Roger here.
Only that.
I get asked that all the time, and I don't have the time to do it. But if anybody wants to do it, please do, because I'd love to hear it myself. I just don't have the time.
All right, and Dan, what about you? Because you don't host a specifically libertarian podcast, but you do host a podcast that libertarians will quickly learn why they would be interested in it. Sure. So how did you go about, did you try to invade the libertarian community a little bit, or did you sort of have a different strategy since you were approaching sort of not necessarily a specifically libertarian audience? You're also going for, the other kooks, like the conspiracy people.
Right.
And, that's...
Preach, brother.
Okay, it's all libertarians. Let's just be honest.
It is mostly libertarians, yes. I don't really have a community. If anybody has one they want to sell, I'll happily buy them. But no.
An assisted living community?
Yeah.
More listeners than I do, asshole.
An assisted listening community.
So, yeah, I started
Are we really going to compare sizes at this point? Come on.
Always.
Let's do it.
I'm staying out of this one.
Is it beard size?
For good reason.
Are we going by beard size or?
Anyway.
Going by hair size. Dan would beat me if he had both sides, but...
That's right. So my community, I kind of modeled after yours, actually, when I got started. I had all the equipment and everything from doing music and stuff to do a podcast and do graphic design and everything. And I just kind of hit you up one day and was like, hey, how do you make this work? You're like, yeah, you just make a forum.
I had no productive answers at all. I was like, I don't know, just like start a Facebook page.
Yeah, definitely barking up the wrong tree there.
He's like, this isn't going to last anyway, so do whatever you want. It's going to die.
I'm like, there's no way you're actually going to do this, random dude. So
in fairness, I've had
whatever.
like 10, 12 people hit me up saying, hey, I'm going to do a podcast since then, and none of them have panned out. But but yeah, mine, I brought over some people from you guys' forum because I was a member of that first, and
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What do you do again? So I brought over some libertarians and everything, but it was mostly just word of mouth, talking to people who were weird, I don't know.
Oh, is that why you had me on your show? Now I know.
Well, they keep bringing it up. Literally.
Look, you're boring Mark. He's taking out his phone.
I'm just checking the time, all right?
When I had Dan
you let me know when you're done with that answer, and I'll give you another question.
And reading my next question.
When I first had Dan on my podcast, the first thing I asked him, so are you a libertarian? I heard about you from the Lines of Liberty, but I can't really piece together
I think
what
that
it
there's
is.
value in being sneaky about it, too.
I don't even know the answer to that.
Dan built the community in a sneaky way. He started making graphics for us randomly that we didn't ask for of funny things we would say on the show. And then next thing you know, we're paying him to do it. and then somehow we started telling people about his podcast because, he gives us a good rate.
Yeah, and here we are. Yeah, no, I think that there is value in being sneaky. I am a libertarian. Don't tell anybody. Good. But I have people of all walks of life on the show just to listen. I think that people are smart. I think that they can choose for themselves. If they hear a good argument from liberal side, then fine. If they're convinced, then so be it. You weren't going to convince them anyway to be on your side. So I think it's important for not every single libertarian podcast to be a libertarian podcast and just kind of be a entertainment, exploring the world podcast and, sneak in. When we do our roundtables with a libertarian, a Democrat, and a Republican, I make it very apparent which side I'm on because I always tell Mark he wins.
I do win, so.
Talking about doing an interview show with actual entertainment. I've been interviewed on so many interview podcasts, and there's a ton of them out there now. I mean, Mark Claire was the standard bearer, but there's a bunch of them now. But the most fun I've ever had being on any show, even libertarians in living room drinking liquor, this guy does a hell of an interview. I mean, my God, we had so much fun.
Thank you.
We still got to finish that out.
We got to talk about, what was it, Rogue One?
Rogue One.
I guess I was just milquetoast and boring. So, no big deal.
You're kind of vanilla. It's
cool.
there.
Look, there's a lot of different types of Oreos now, but the classic's always good sometimes.
Look, there was 2 other libertarian podcasts when I started. I didn't have to be that interesting. No one told me you'd have to get good.
And he still has
the market provides. The free
It's been
market
6
will
years.
provide.
When's it going to happen, Mark?
Any day
He's
now.
working on it.
Hopefully this weekend. That's the plan.
Okay, good. If you need any advice, just
I'm
let me
going to
know.
buy some of those not mushrooms later, and we'll see if that helps. What I want to talk about now is what is the biggest challenge you guys have faced? Because I think there's no doubt if you've been a podcaster, there are times that you have said, why the fuck am I doing this? This is not worth the effort. My computer just crashed. I just lost these files. I have to re-record this, re-record that. And then you think, why am I even doing this? And yet you brush it off and you end up doing it and that's why we're still here. What sort of challenges have you faced along the way that you've been able to overcome? More so in just the terms of building that community, or in terms of your computer crashing. Those are fun stories too. Nick, why don't we start with you? We'll mix it up.
The first thing you do is don't upset Dark Tom Woods. That's usually the first thing you don't want to do. Honestly, for me, the biggest challenge I've always found is specifically the growth of anything, because what I find is that while you have all these libertarian podcasts, there's also a very insulating effect where people, they find the community that they belong to, and then they just kind of settle for that community as opposed to going out and seeing what else is out there. That's really the reason, because even before you'd suggested the idea of a Libertarian Clip Show, for me it was the idea of I wanted to try and bring more of the communities together. There's the exact moment for me was I heard about the Rollo and Slappy podcast and the Friends Against Government podcast that had been podcasting for over a year before I'd ever heard of them. And it's not like libertarians are a gigantic community to begin with. So the idea that there's 2 podcasts out there that have operated for a year without having ever come into my, area of, in my space where I've seen them was just ludicrous to me. So I started seeing how many more were out there, and there's hundreds of libertarian podcasts that most people will never hear of unless somebody actively goes from one group to the next group and starts spreading the word about them. And to me, that's been probably the biggest thing, is just trying to get people to leave that little community, go from Lions of Liberty into the system is down, or to the Anarcho-Wink community, and become a part of that one as well. Because you don't know that your favorite podcast you've probably never even heard yet.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, just having people find you is such a big challenge, and I think it was, I don't know if it was easier back in the day, but I can't tell you how many people found my show that told me all they did was go into iTunes and search Libertarian Podcast.
That's how I got there.
And we were one of the ones that came up. And I think that challenge is a lot harder now, because now, you might not be the top of that list like we were, because we were one of 3 or what have you. Now there's hundreds that might come up, and yours might be way down here.
There's 15 Cato podcasts you got to get to give you.
Well, there's not only that, there's the censorship too now, right? That's the other thing we have to worry about, how you brand your podcast and certain things like that.
Do you know anything about getting kicked off Facebook?
I know a lot about getting kicked off Facebook. So Anarcho Coffee...
That sounds like a challenge you might have faced at some point.
Was banned from advertising on Facebook, believe it or not, within the first month.
For being too delicious?
I know my first advertisement for Sounds Like Liberty got declined for political reasons. I had to go and file all the paperwork as a political entity on Facebook to advertise.
So going back to what you were saying with the social media, so Facebook is a platform that's kind of almost dying for liberty in some cases, so we have to find other means for gathering our audience, right? So...
if you have a libertarian podcast and don't have your own URL, you're doing it wrong.
No shit. Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
In fact, you should probably have 15 URLs.
Including doc.
The .edu, even the .gov. I know it's going to feel dirty, but you need to get that one too.
It only feels dirty.
Lavaflow.gov. That's how I find your podcast every time. Dan, Roger, I don't care who talks next. I stopped caring, but
What was the question?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Challenges.
That's why I teach you up. What
is
are the
the
biggest
meaning of
challenges
life?
you face in building your community?
Biggest challenge, finding time, because I script my podcast, because as you guys can tell, I'm not very good off the cuff. So I script my podcast, but finding all of the news articles and so weeding through the bullshit and finding the ones I want to do. And I want to make sure I'm, giving accurate information. So checking all of my sources and checking everything and then writing it. And then finding time where my kids are not screaming and the dogs aren't going nuts to go record. And finding time is the toughest for me. I was hoping to get a show out last week before PorcFest, but PorcFest shit, of course, came up last week. So I didn't get a show out last week. So I'm kind of inconsistent in that manner because I've got a life that I've got to live. And, the podcast, I love doing it so much, but it's one of those things that if I have to, I can kind of push it off. So, but finding time is my toughest.
Yeah, the time and really the motivation, I think, because they're the same thing. We all have time to do whatever we want. It's really how we prioritize our time. And
I just want to point out, says the only guy in here without kids.
Yeah. I got plenty of time. Hey, look. Tinder and Bumble dates take a lot of time.
If it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be able to do the podcast.
You know how much swiping you got to do to find the right one? Come on. Dan, what about you? What's your biggest challenge besides, having to talk to libertarians?
Yeah. No, my biggest challenge, kind of like I said before, is I feel like it's basically that I don't have any one thing. Like we talk about conspiracies, politics, and religion, but we're not a conspiracy podcast. We're not a politics podcast. We're not a religion podcast. So people come when they hear a topic that they like, but it's so broad and diverse. I think like we'll have one episode that is like massive downloads, and then nobody sticks around for the next one. And then
that's the ones I'm on, right?
No. Which one? The next one? Yes.
In the future.
Yes. That's probably been my biggest struggle, and obviously time. We're all humans. I've cut out shows that I had great ideas for, and just you got to let some things go in order to make sure that one weekly episode is at least quality. Sacrifice quantity if you have to.
And I think that is one of the bigger challenges, like we've all kind of alluded to, is that 6 years ago when I started, there was hardly any libertarian podcasts, and now you can't run into somebody at the bonfire that doesn't have a podcast. There are so many out there, and it really has become more difficult to stand out. And especially as I have more competition, I have more people that are, finding new places for their earbuds to go.
At least you have liberty in your name, though, so people will find
true.
you accidentally.
Yeah, that's the key.
Hey guys, this is Dan's wife, Kayla. I just wanted to interrupt this podcast to let you know that he puts a lot of work into it for currently no monetary profit. And he has a family to feed. To do so, he runs his own media business called Goulash Media. Dan has a crazy creative brain that makes him uniquely able to take your project, whatever it may be, and make it the full package. So whether you're in need of graphic design, logos, branding, commercials, wedding videos, podcast jingles, music production, music videos, merchandise, websites, pictures, or what have you, contact Dan and he'll seriously make you look and sound awesome. For more information, just go to goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where Dan caters to the little guy with the big vision.
So I'm curious, you kind of did start, even aside from starting the whole libertarian podcasting thing, you guys were the first to do the whole network thing, which we're seeing a lot more of now, where the podcasts are linking together to form
I don't use
groups.
the word network personally, but
I know,
I know
and
what
it's
you're saying.
actually your biggest flaw with that. We can talk about the marketing here, but whatever. But I mean, you guys
talk about this behind the
started
tent.
that, and now you've got like the Think
What are you
Liberty
doing behind the
Network.
tent?
Yeah, John, you've got
Nick's
the
calling him
Launchpad
Daddy
Media that
behind
I'm
the
with. There's just networks popping up all over the place, kind of taking what you guys said. Let's keep that feed going and get people listening to more to build more cohesive communities.
Well, yeah, and a network is sort of a community in and of itself, in a way. I mean, you've started. Well, not you started. You're part of the
Launchpad Media with Johnny Rocket.
Part of the Launchpad Media Network. Roger, you have a network as well. Do you want to talk about why you decide a little bit to, because you actually started your network, Roger, so maybe you can go into that a little bit.
Is it a
why
network or a
to,
cult?
Right. So
These are the same word. I don't.
Oh, okay.
So I started Pax Libertas Productions. Actually, it was in my head before I did my first episode. You can go back. Please don't listen to the first episode. It's shit.
Oh no! Don't
It is
anybody.
total shit.
Nobody should listen to the episode 1 of any of our shows.
Right. No, it is total shit. But at the end of that, I put in, this has been a Pax Libertas Productions network from day one because I knew that eventually, if this was successful, I'd want to, branch out in other areas. And so a couple years after that, I brought the first one in, and it's just kind of expanded from there. I think we have 7 shows on the network now. And you're right, that community really helps, get those.
We don't have time to plug them all. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not going. But that community helps get the new ones off the ground because we talk about when a new one pops up, we talk about it on the shows. So it helps kind of start building steam for them, and it's a really great way to start just building that network.
Speaking of which, can you get on the ANCAP Barbershop guys to get their content out?
He sent me one this week, and I'm at PorcFest. I can't do shit with it, so I'll have to wait till next week.
I think that touches on something that, excuse me, differentiates podcasts from, say, traditional media, traditional radio, where you don't really hear Fox News promoting CNN. You don't see this kind of thing in traditional corporate media. But podcasting is very different in the sense that podcasters, while we are competition in the sense that we're all fighting for people's time, podcasting is approached very differently. I think podcasters approach things as a community. Like, I try to help my fellow podcasters. Roger and I are part of the League of Liberty. It's us, and we are libertarians, and Blast Off with Johnny Rocket. And we all promote each other's shows. We used to sometimes do a bonus show for our Patreon listeners. We'll get back to it soon. But, the point is, while we are technically all competition with each other, we all do very different shows, and it's possible that by promoting someone else's show, they might decide to listen to that show more than yours. It's entirely possible. But
That's on you, though. I mean,
It is.
if they're
No,
better,
sure.
then
Quit sucking so hard.
they should.
Exactly. I wasn't specifically referring to me.
From a sales
I was
perspective,
only looking at you. It's okay.
Just buy the coffee. Just buy the coffee. It's all right.
But I think in a sense, especially I guess maybe it's different when we're in more of the political arena, and we all started this in some way or another because of the ideas more than, we're not looking to make big bucks. It would be wonderful if we did. I will accept donations afterwards. But really, we all got involved in this because we're very passionate about something we believe in. So to us, I think this is true in all of podcasting, really, even non-political podcasting, but I think we see other podcasts not as enemies, but as part of this this larger community that we're all trying to build together. And I get thrilled when I see another libertarian podcast come up because they might do something just a little different that appeals to someone else just in a different way that I can't, or that the other people on the Lions of Liberty shows can't, but they can. And they might even mention my show at some point, and they might even trickle some of their fans back to us. And if we can all build that community together, we can all sort of build each other up and continue to spread these ideas that we're so passionate about.
You've talked about that saturation of the marketplace, but I think that that's a great thing because people who respond to my show may not respond to your show, and vice versa. And nobody who likes my show likes We Are Libertarians, for example. I mean, there's just
I listen to both, believe it or not. So
that's only because we're buddies.
I am the bridge.
But that's why I want so many out there, because eventually, hopefully, one of those shows is going to speak to some muggle who has never heard of libertarianism or liberty, and it's going to get them involved. So I want 1,000 more libertarian podcasts just for that reason alone.
Well, I mean, and even from like the selfish perspective, even if somebody does stop listening to your show and goes to another show, all you're doing is you're finding the people that you resonate with. If you're getting into advertising, you're not going to waste money advertising to somebody who really doesn't want to buy.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Find the people that are your
You're finding
people.
your tribe, right? That's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And that's
I mean, I
what
didn't
we've
start
done.
my show to self-masturbate. I started my show to get the ideas of liberty out there.
That's why I started my show.
Well, it wasn't, right. I mean, it wasn't to promote me. It had nothing. Matter of fact,
Is there another kind of masturbate that's not self-masturbate? I just wanted to. I know there's kids here, but we can again at the after party.
Just ask my wife. But anyway, I didn't start. I almost started my show with an alias because I didn't want my show to be about me. This show is not about me. It's about getting those ideas out there, and that's so much more important than the money I bring in. And the money's great because it gives me more incentive to do it. It gives me feedback, and so that's really great, and I love it. And I've got so many supporters here this week. It's so great how many of them in here. But and I love that. But I didn't start it for that. I didn't start it to make a penny. If I wasn't making a penny, I'd still do my show every week.
No,
I'm not making a penny.
Yeah, I'm still in the red. My justification is
Dan, what would you do if you made no money on your podcast? Never mind.
Yeah, this whole topic, I kind of see it kind of like I grew up in bands and things like that, and like the local band scene where everybody's like fighting to make it, and it's like I always had when I was doing the band stuff, I was always like, we're all fighting and like bashing on each other. Nobody's supporting each other. None of you are going to get out of here. Like nobody's going to quote unquote make it. Mark,
Well,
go
we're
check
not
your
getting
text.
paid to do this.
Well, My Chemical Romance and Coheed and Cambria got big because of each other.
Sure,
if it hadn't
yeah.
been for that New York scene building each other up,
Right.
they never would have been what they were.
Yeah, and that's what I always said in the band world. It's like nobody's going to get out of here if we don't lift each other up, and then maybe there's a chance that one of us might get heard by somebody. None of us have, but
Neither is your podcast.
I think it's.
But you're telling me there's a chance.
Speaking
That's
of which,
why I do the podcast.
I don't have to go back to the office.
our boy Dan over here just released a really sweet EP. If you're into old school pop punk, 2 weeks
did.
ago.
Look, we're not here to plug our personal things, so no.
You can get it on.
LionsLiberty.com.
You can actually plug it
coffee.
if you want.
No, I
It's
don't
actually
care.
the only reason we're up here once again.
See me after.
We don't have a ton
I
of
don't
time.
sell coffee.
We don't have a ton of time left, so I'd like to at least give a few moments to open it up for questions if anybody would like to give one. Ask
No,
one.
not this guy.
Yeah.
Take his. He's no fun.
Does anybody have questions? Come on up.
I'll share.
He was clearly avoiding the mic anyways.
Gabby.
Hey, so first off, I want to say thanks. I've heard 3 of your shows, and
You don't need to name which
No,
three,
no,
it's
no.
fine.
I've got to know.
We all know who it is.
I want to
It's,
know. Is it this guy?
well, it's Mark, Roger, and Jay.
Oh.
Besides the point,
But now
I'm
she's
taking
gonna-
back your guest appearance, Jay.
But I do want to say thank you first off. And I've been wanting to create my own podcast for a few years now, and I keep having this internal battle a little bit because I am a young professional.
Just do
and-
it. Stop thinking about. Don't just do it.
We'll let her answer the question, and then we'll get to
because
the...
you're right. I'm probably overthinking it, but I'm a young professional, and I want to make sure I'm not limiting my career opportunities. And as I understand the media, and when things go out in the public can misinterpret certain messages.
Or interpret it
And that w-
properly.
Well, that was certainly a fear for me because I've been an IT professional for years. I was director of IT when I started my show, and that was a big fear for me. Fortunately, I was working for a company at the time that didn't give a shit. But moving up here to New Hampshire, I'm just thankful that the people who moved me up here for my job did not fucking Google me, apparently, because if they had, they never would have hired me. Now I work for myself at home, so it doesn't matter. I do IT contract work, podcasting, audiobooks. So I guess doing that diversity really helps because if one thing drops off, I've got something to fall back on. But it's a challenge. So maybe consider an alias, and that's why I was considering an alias.
Yeah,
Because-
Gabby,
Obviously, Mance Raider got huge. Nobody knew who he was.
Right.
Just
And I was going to have you on the show, right? We were going to talk about this, yeah. And that was my biggest fear too, right? I still work a 9-to-5 job for a company that I'm afraid of getting fired from every day. But at some point, you've got to stand up and just say, I don't give a shit anymore. These are my views, and this is what I believe.
the other
Yeah.
way you can go is marry a black woman and work for Jews, so they can't say
Then
anything.
nobody
about me.
can judge you for anything.
And nobody will judge you.
They can't
It's
say
not
shit.
You
even
should be
noon
gay,
and
too.
We're going there. I didn't know the JQ was coming up today.
For me, I totally understand what you're saying. I actually run my own business. I'm self-employed, and I film weddings primarily. So, and I still have this constant thing in the back of my mind that's like, what if somebody looks up your show? It's on your Facebook page. Nobody does. So I haven't been asked about it yet.
We'd love
and
you to
it's-
shit our wedding, but I noticed this flat Earth thing.
Exactly. I talk about all sorts of crazy shit,
up with
and
that?
people still keep hiring me and stuff that's very anti-liberal.
Does
and
that
I know-
affect the cinematography, I think, is the question. Do you have to account for the rotation, or...
Yes.
Now, we can talk, again, after party.
While I joke about like being married to a black woman, I also, part of my actual day job is I'm a performer musically, so I go out and do cover shows at bar gigs. And let's just say my politics aren't exactly going to make me friends in
I
that
thought you were a
arena
Chip and Dale
amongst
dancer.
the local music community. So there is a certain degree to which I do my best to kind of keep the politics separate from that community. Like I don't go advertising all my stuff on my Facebook constantly.
Same.
will
I don't post
advertise
any of
within
my
community.
show stuff on my personal Facebook.
Exactly. You there's ways that you can go to kind of keep those two things as separate as you need to.
It is a legitimate concern. I've had the same concern myself. When we first started our website, before it was even a podcast, we just didn't use last names. We thought we were being coy.
He's
And
got
then-
an Emmy. What is he complaining
And
about?
I do work for a fairly well-known company, and I mean, I think about it all the time. People get fired for doing things outside of work all the time. So it's not something that's not a concern. I think at some point you just have to decide, how much you care. I mean, that really is the battle, and there's no right or wrong answer. And at some point, I just decided I'm going to put my views out there. I'm going to do my thing. If it affects my life negatively, I'll use that as marketing, and I will just put more into it.
Monetize your haters.
Right.
Like being banned from Facebook.
It hasn't done anything yet. So.
Does anybody on the stage, have you guys ever felt like you've missed an opportunity because of your podcast?
No.
No, not yet.
Me either.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Out of curiosity, what are you looking to start a podcast about?
Good question. So I definitely want to. From my experience, when I look at different podcasts, I definitely see there's a lot of male podcasts out there.
Absolutely.
And I think
You don't say?
Really?
Sausage Fest.
I don't know why you would.
Hey, my co-host is a woman.
Mark's borderline.
I identify as a giraffe.
So, and I want to bring more women into the liberty community. Really, that's my
Hell
goal.
yeah.
We'd love to have
Hell
you.
yeah.
So, but I don't want to limit it to women in liberty. So I want to talk about like peaceful parenting or non-aggressive communication styles, like more
I need
peaceful
that.
We could really
communication.
use a peaceful parenting person that's not that Nazi guy.
Well, one free family on the Pax Libertas Productions Network is Peaceful Parenting, a great couple here in New Hampshire. But
My
do it on
wife could
Pax
use your
Libertas
help right
Productions.
now.
Let's make that happen.
Well, the
Are you secular? Because I could use a secular peaceful parenting podcast if we got one of those.
I also work in higher ed, so my overall theme was going to be like living and learning in liberty, like triple L.
Just start it.
So
I love
Do
that.
it.
That's
I
good.
love it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Make it happen, please.
Start it this
If there's
weekend. We
anything
have
anybody-
audio equipment here. I mean, no better time.
If there's anything
I'm
anybody
gonna
up
go
here can
continue
do
drinking.
to help you, just reach out to us. I'm
Yeah,
sure
for
all
sure.
of us will be glad to
Yeah.
help.
We'll be
This
here
is-
all
this is
weekend
just a
too, so feel
recruitment
free to ask
panel.
any of us.
This is just
off
for
panel.
recruiting. So if anybody else has any podcast ideas, these guys are taking bids right now. Apparently.
Yeah, I've been looking to grow the Liberty Hippie Network, so we'll do that.
Anybody have another question? We
You
are.
know, you guys all
we do-
talked about liberty
Yeah.
on yours, and you're afraid of that being judged.
Well, yours is a
I
little
talk
more.
about flat Earth and people
Talk
who
about
wear small hats and
yeah,
different things.
reptilian
Dan-
shapeshifters.
All sorts of
and-
fun stuff.
Nobody can take that seriously is the thing. They think that we're Nazis. You're
Right.
just weird.
That's true.
They don't. They've got a
They're not
cousin
wrong.
just like you.
If
Is
you
it
are
better to be
Nazis, and I am
a little
weird.
weird or literally Hitler. I'm not sure.
They're lizard people.
He's got a Hitler dog there.
Tyler, you got any questions? I know you do. I can see it in your eyes. You're ready to go. First of all, this guy's ready to go UFC tap out on us, so watch out.
So, Dan,
Doesn't even wear shoes. He's ready for the octagon. You got 10 seconds to ask a question, and we got 50 seconds.
Well, let
to
him ask, Howie.
Oh.
Ouch.
so Dan, did we ever go to the moon? Just wondering.
Sir, how does this build a community, this question?
Come on.
That's a good question.
We're going to do a around the campfire discussion about this with Roger later this weekend.
Literally, sometime this weekend, we're going to record a conspiracy podcast
Yeah.
around some sort of fire. So,
Yes. Or no
Well,
fire.
That's a teaser.
Fire is
High
not
level teaser for
required.
that.
No.
For
Next
Dan
question.
as well. Because, okay, so.
Well, we do have to wrap now, but
You-
I'll let you
you
ask the
had,
question, and we'll answer it afterwards.
You had some York Masons on. I think you should interview a few Scottish, right?
If you know any, send them my
Technically,
way.
that was
I'm
not
down.
asked in the form of a question, sir, so you're off the show. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys, for coming out. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hope you learned something, and we're around all weekend. Feel free to ask us questions.
Thank you very much to Mark.
Except
and
Dan, he's weird.
And Roger and Jay and Nikki P.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with all the people as much as I did. And I did. I've listened back to it since the day that we did it, and I thought it was a pretty fun conversation. They were cool guys to hang out with, even more behind the scenes, even more in the less formal settings around the campfires and in the VIP tents, having drinks and stuff like that. This panel was recorded at like 10 in the morning, so we weren't quite sauced up yet. I'm sure some people were still, liquored up from the night before, but it's fun. If you want to hear some of the more the less sober conversations, you can find those at thesystemisdown.com/support or patreon.com/thesystemisdown, and joining the Downers Club for as little as $5 a month. And I've got plenty, as I said at the beginning of the show, I have plenty coming out from behind the scenes looks. There were a lot of times where we're just standing around ranting. The recording might jump into the middle of a conversation because we're just standing around ranting. And I'm like, why are we not recording this? Whip out a microphone and just keep going. So once I'm able to weed my way through the masses of endless audio, you will get it. You will get it in there. And there's already some in there. It's coming out. So check it out. Support the show. Be a good friend. And that'd be great. Also, be sure to check out the second weekly show that we do here on The System Is Down called QAnon Chronicles, where we dig into the news through the lens of kind of the QAnon conspiracy side of things. That is hosted by Scott McElroy. And it's very, very strange and bizarre and fascinating. Some of the stuff some of the predictions that are made by whoever this Q thing is being run or hosted by, whatever person or people they are, they keep predicting things pretty accurately. That's the most compelling thing to me, is that, I mean, whether you like it or you hate it, the predictions a lot of the time are pretty spot on. So even if it is just one person, even if you don't agree with them or think that they're like the savior to humanity, there's some very strange stuff going on in there. So check that out. You can check it out at QAnonChronicles.com or just wherever you're listening to this. You can find that on Friday, every single Friday, right here. Go join the forum we talked about in the panel. We talked about forums and things, groups, communities. You can be a part of our community right now at tsidpod.com/forum, or just go to Facebook and type in The System Is Down Forum, and you can join for absolutely free and just join the conversations, be a part of it, and be a part of the community and help grow the message of being weird and authentic and having uncomfortable conversations, being humble. Again, it's free. It's on Facebook right now. We might have to move eventually, but for now, we are on Facebook. If you check Facebook and we are not there, and if you're listening to this in the future, then just go to tsidpod.com and I'll definitely put up some links and announcements and all sorts of things. You can find everything through that website. So there's that. I'm working on a documentary. I recorded a bunch of stuff at PorcFest for it. I was basically doing interviews with Mark Clare for their Lines of Liberty stuff. He was interviewing people and I was filming them. So he would interview people like Jeffrey Tucker, Nicholas Sarwark, the head chairman of the Libertarian Party, interviewing some of these bigger name people. And then as soon as he was done, I'd be like, hey, can I get one more question from you? And of course, like, sure, why not? Like, so what do you think about the moon landing? You think that man has walked on the moon? So kind of got some great reactions and things, people just being thrown off by the question entirely. But all that's going to be in, well, not all of it, not every single one probably, but a lot of that is going to be in the documentary. The documentary, if you're not familiar, is called The Moon, the Myth, the Legend, Lunar Lore for Humble Dummies. It is just digging into humanity and why certain people come to certain conclusions. Some people conclude, like in this one, we're obviously just focusing on the moon landing, but why do certain people still believe that the moon landing was faked or staged? And why do other people think that those people are retards? Why are people so quick to judge? Talked about that a lot at PorcFest, and you're going to get that. You're going to get some sneak peeks at that content also if you're in the Downers Club. But if you don't want to join the Downers Club and you just want to check out the documentary, then go over to Indiegogo and you can pre-order your copy right now. The project is fully funded, and I don't really care about money, but if you would like to pre-order your copy, you can do so, and you can get all sorts of different merch and things, and you can watch the trailer and all that fun stuff over at Indiegogo or moonmythlegend.com. Alrighty. As you know, we're on all the platforms for now. Minds, Gabs, Twitters, YouTubes, YouTubes, all the things. Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Go subscribe, like, share. I don't need to tell you. If you haven't done it, then you're not gonna. But if you wouldn't mind changing your mind and doing it now, that'd be fantastic. And it would cost you absolutely nothing and help this community, for one, grow and expand and get bigger and better and more beautiful and make the world a more beautiful place. Because our goal here is to change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time by showing people, hey, it's fine. It's fine to disagree. It's fine to have these conversations. The person that you disagree with is not your enemy. The person that you disagree with is just a person. 100,000 variables that went through 100,000 variables and came to a different conclusion than you. So humble yourself, be open-minded, know what you believe and why you believe it, and listen. So that's it for me today. Thank you guys so much for listening, and tune in next week. I believe next week is James Corbett from the Corbett Report. Yeah. You might be familiar if you're into the conspiracy stuff. He's a pretty big name in that world, so check that out. We're talking about Bohemian Grove and chemtrails and all sorts of fun things, so it's going to be a nice, weird one. So, of course, tune in next week, and if you'll have me, I'll be right back here, nestled safely into your filthy little ear canal like a I don't know, like a bunny in a sock. My analogy game is not strong today. But yeah, thanks guys for listening. I'll talk to you later. And question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.